Hello everyone, Dominic here from Esports News UK. Got a special LEC guest today. Someone who is at SK Gaming, your general manager. It's InnerFlame, or Joe Eloasi. I hope I've pronounced that right. Joe,
Yeah,
thanks
that's
for
right.
joining me.
No, thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
No, we've been wanting to talk for a while, right? Because you've got a lot of experience in esports, in League of Legends, but you're British as well. I mean, you've just told me off camera your surname is Moroccan. So
Yeah, yeah.
have you grown up in UK? What's your background?
Yeah, so I'm from London originally, Southeast London, around Streatham area, if you know it. And yeah, my dad's from Morocco, my mum's English. So yeah.
Okay, cool. And yeah, a bit, and likewise myself, Dom Sacco. It's that's Maltese. Well, if you go back far enough, it's Italian. But I grew up in
Mhm.
the UK, so
Right.
okay, cool. So just firstly, Joe, I'm interested in your background before we jump into LEC and everything.
Mhm.
How you first got into League of Legends? Because I'm told that you were classmates with Mac from Mad Lions. Is that
Yeah, that's
correct?
correct. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was in primary school at some point with him. Not quite sure exactly what age that was. But I kind of uh, left and changed schools at some point in time, and then eventually I went on to kind of leaving school for esports at 17. So yeah, that is true.
Yeah. So what were you friends with him? Were there any rivalries back then? I guess League of Legends wasn't a thing back then.
No, no, not at all. I mean, of course there were games around, online games weren't as big. I suppose there was World of Warcraft was like the biggest one. I'm not sure if you played it back then. Like,
I
I wouldn't say
did.
we were close, but we were not unfriendly for sure. I think we were just kind of annexed onto the same group-ish, so we knew each other, and we shared a few classes together, but we never really like hung out too much in school, but it was nothing, no bad blood there, if that's if that's what you're asking for
No,
sure.
no, not at all. It's just interesting that you went to the same school out of all the places in the world,
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
UK.
So it's actually really it's a really strange coincidence because I also went to school with Finley, who is formerly a Fnatic and Games Origin, when
Right.
we went about seven and he was eight, right? So even further back in like in that primary prep school, I was in the same school as him. And I mean,
Wow.
I think the only thing I remember about that is I think I remember his name being read off a register or something like that because he was in the year above me. But it's just like the odds are already astronomical to already get into the industry, and then to have two people that I went to school with also, at competing at this level too is really like even stranger, right?
Yeah, it's mad in the same game and at the same level as
Yeah,
well.
exactly, exactly, exactly. So it's
So
a
that's
weird coincidence.
it is, yeah, it's really interesting. And in terms of how you got into esports, Joe, what was
Mhm.
your earliest memories or esports and or League of Legends as well, I guess?
Yeah, I mean that's a really good question, right? Because even though I was in at the beginning of League of Legends, my interest in esports was obviously before that in my teenage years. I was watching a bit of StarCraft 2. I remember going to, I think it was like the WCS finals in London. I can't remember which theatre it was in, but like for the UK finals. Even going to iSeries back in the day as well with
Mm.
just a few friends. Um, I can't think it was in Telford or something back then. I honestly don't exactly remember, but yeah, like my I had interest in esports, predominantly Counter Strike and StarCraft.
Yeah.
Before that, a little bit of Warcraft 3 as well. It obviously wasn't as accessible to watch back then, but obviously I kind of went out my way to try and do that. And interestingly enough, on like the SK Gaming site back then was like a big place for like highlight videos and whatnot as well. So actually, yeah, I was just a teenager who had an interest in it, and then League of Legends kind of came around, and I got in pretty early.
Were you a player to begin with, Joe, or was it straight into coaching?
No, no. So I had a bit of a weird um, career path, let's say, because back in season one, there were obviously no coaches. I mean, to be honest, even the players' knowledge was like super limited back then as well. Like the game was completely different, and almost everything was kind of individual skill, you know, and who, if somebody wins a lane, like really hard, then they would take over the game, you know. The game looked a lot more like how Dota used to a long time ago, right? Obviously, because it was just I don't want to say a clone, but a like birth child of Dota, right?
Yeah.
At the time. So actually, I started off working in like, well, not working, but like I was in the community, which ran a bit like a WoW guild. And I led the recruitment, and I also ran tournaments for this community as well. I think we started with like 12 people, and at some point we had I think we had up to like 2,000 concurrent people in this community as well. So I was running these in-house tournaments, and I was just doing this from my bedroom back in the day. And sometimes I would hit up Riot for some RP or Triumphant Prize, or for example, you know, I would talk to Steel Series and maybe get like 5 keyboards, which back then was a really big prize pool because, you know, nobody was really getting any big substantial cash prizes, right? So it started with that, and I had one team that kept winning my tournaments, and I thought, right, how do I get them out of my tournaments so people still want to play in them? So I was like, okay, let me work with you guys. Let me put you against better opponents. Let me do your scheduling for you. So like I was kind of one of the earliest, let's say, managers, like true managers there. So I guess at some point had gained the respect of the guys to have like an opinion and a say on who to bring and whatnot as well. Because, you know, I think one of the things that's defined my career the whole way through is I've spent a lot of time like watching the game, especially solo queue. Like it's still to this day, maybe I don't do it as much because I guess I'm in like a higher position now. But I think one of the things that has been consistent the whole way through my career is like watching solo queue. And back then, just because I left school at the time, was kind of figuring out what I wanted to do. I was spending maybe 15, 16 hours a day watching solo queue. So I had a very like good pulse on like the up and coming players. And, you know, we were just a bunch of randoms initially. And then I found like a sponsor, let's say, an organization for us. And we became like a very good online team. We were beating teams like SK, we were beating teams. I think we were beating everyone who was not M5, and we had trouble against the LGU as well because they were like obviously really good as well. But I think Fnatic and SK, at least online, we were beating consistently. And then, I mean, it's a long story from there basically. So
it's interesting. You sort of fell into that. It was your idea to sort of just mold that team. And it's just interesting how that happened, how you had that idea. I guess you didn't have a sort of ambition at the time of, I want to be a esports manager. It just, you saw that team and found an opportunity.
I think it's in my nature because I'm a very competitive person, right? I always played a lot of sport growing up. I played a bit of football at like a fairly decent level. I mean, I had a few academy trials and whatever, but like never quite got in. I was never quite good enough, you know. But always played other sports, rugby as well. And I've always been like a very competitive person. So I think from an early age, I always knew I wanted to be in something competitive. Yeah. Obviously, my dream when I was a kid was to be in football. And I was always kind of like building my career path to end up that way. But actually, obviously, League of Legends came around and I'll be honest, I knew from like a fairly early point that it could go big because like I was watching StarCraft, I was watching CS, and I saw how big it got at some points. Obviously, I was not watching like early StarCraft, but definitely when StarCraft 2 was around and whatnot as well, it was huge, and the audience was huge, and the audience in online was huge as well. And I just thought to myself like, wow, I love watching League. And I've found that like a lot of people around me were also kind of starting to play the game. Oh yeah, let's watch like pro games as well. So I had a feeling that it would blow up, but obviously you can never imagine it has blown up to the level it is at now, right? We're obviously like thing with like traditional sports viewership now. So
yeah, absolutely. I'm keen to know when that was, that team you set up. you worked with Joe, because looking at your history, there's a lot of
Yeah.
orgs or team names in there that aren't around anymore. Sinners Never Sleep, apparently.
Yeah. That was later on. The one that I was specifically talking about was called Game Hoppers.
Right. Oh, yes.
I think on Leaguepedia it's actually not like quite accurate. I think it's even earlier than that we were together, but we just had a different name, And I think it's only the year listed, I think, is only season 2, which is when we had like a sponsor or like an org.
Yeah.
Before that, we just had some random name. We had like 5 or 6 different random names.
Okay.
We did some kind of pub. Really like to start with. So
yeah, I guess from that initial team you had, then you transitioned. There was other ones, Lemon Dogs. There's a few other. Are there any sort of particular memories from that time, Joe, that stand out, or learning experiences?
Yeah, I mean, so I was not part of like the Lemon Dogs phase. I had a bit of a quarrel with my players at the time, so I didn't continue into the Lemon Dogs phase.
Mm-hmm.
But that was my team predominantly. I mean, it's quite like well documented that like it was mine and one of the players' brainchild essentially, which is now still playing to this day, which is Nukta. We like together. I think he was a player that like I was competing against at the time in season 2. And he was playing for other teams, and we obviously, from competing against each other and talking a lot, we decided we would make like a team together that would try and get into the ULCS. And actually, we were not in the very first split because I think Nuke Duck was too young, and I also had Mr. Rallows, who was too young, who I took from Game Hoppers, and then we picked Zoro Zero out of solo queue, and we had this nice like mix. I think we were Failer, who was a big name back then, also played a little bit in Lemon Dogs, and Nunia, who was a former World of Warcraft professional player as well. Yeah, it was really like a mix initially, and then Mr. Rallows, like I said, was too young for even the summer qualifier as well. So we needed to find an AD, and I was watching Tabs off-roll AD. And Tabs was like a really established player back then. I mean, he was like one of the best players in season 2 for sure. He played a lot of lands. He was super good mid laner, super well established. And I saw him off roll, and I just asked him, since I think he was a free agent at the time, if he wanted to join us for this qualifier and try and get to like ULCS. And yeah, we 3-0 AAA. We also 2-1 TCM, which is a old UK org as well. Also an org that I worked for back in the day as well. So yeah, it was really a strange time, because it was very much like the Wild West back then. There were so many players who were definitely good enough to play in the ULCS, but because it was like the first year, there were a lot of players who either didn't participate in the qualifier or maybe weren't as well known, and there were a lot of teams that were already established and together. So I don't like the first year of like ULCS was necessarily the highest quality it could have been, but of course that's natural in like the formation of like the league, right?
Yeah, it's interesting to talk to you, because like you say, there aren't many people that have been around working in the scene for this long, since sort of season 1 time. A lot of the veterans and so on, you're still working in the scene.
Yeah, it's strange. I always make a joke about it with my players, because they call me an old man now. I mean, I'm only 27, right? But
That's mad.
Yeah, but I've been in the scene as long as some of them have been like in primary, like I wouldn't say in primary school, but just leaving primary school. You know what I mean? So it's just it's a bit strange for me, and at the same time, I always joke that I can count the amount of people who are still here from season 1 on 2 hands. I know there's like an observer who was a professional player in season 1. Fly from Rogue, who's the other old boy with me as well, who was there in season 1. And then some of the coaches are around, like Freddie 122, from the UK as well. But he even played for me in season 5. So.
Yeah, I remember looking back on all that, and it's a lot of those OGs as well. The players have become streamers and things now, right? It's good to see that.
Exactly.
So, like I say, you've got a really interesting background. I think your SK Gaming and SK Gaming Prime is, I guess, most of your career, right? You've had 2 stints now with SK, and I just, would love to go back and talk about your experiences back in 2014, 2015 with the academy team, and also the first team. You know, you were working with people like Forgiven and then Rated, and you know, I hear a lot of things. I watched an interview the other week on Thorin's YouTube channel with Youngbuck from Excel, saying that, you know, and I think it's well known that Forgiven apparently is difficult to work with, but I just found it quite interesting, is that enigma of a great player at the time, but also hard to work with. That must have been a unique sort of mix to deal with.
You know, I mean, back in those days, it was way more. I'd say the environment was far more toxic. You know, there was a lot less support as far as like personal development and all that. Like, I mean, there just wasn't the money in the scene. You know, I mean, the infrastructure we have now is just night and day, and we, you know, what we have now is even similar with a lot of like the professional sports clubs out there. You know, we couldn't have dreamed of having that back then. It was literally 5 of us, or six of us, sorry, 5 players and myself, who was actually a managing coach. So I very much operated like a football manager back then.
Right.
So that was like my coaching stint, right? It was first of all way more, let's say, acceptable to be that way back then, or let's say the tolerance was way higher for it. But at the same time, for me, I think some of like the greatest players out there can be very difficult, you know. And if you look at, you know, UK folklore, you know, you look at Paul Gascoigne, for example, he's an absolute genius and had his demons, you know what I mean? So there are, I think, many comparisons you can draw. Look at Dennis Rodman out there as well, of course. Like, these are very like controversial figures, but it doesn't change the fact that they were great players as well, you know. And I must say, like, I come from Streatham, you know. It's not, anyone from the UK knows it's not like the nicest area. And, you know, I think while I was very lucky to go to a nice school, like a private school, even just growing up in the area and stuff, it toughened you up a bit. So I also worked as a chef for a little bit, and that put me through put me through some stuff as well, you know, a lot of stress. So honestly, dealing with egos and whatnot was something I kind of I grew a bit of a backbone before I even started like the coaching part, you know. And I must say, in that team specifically with like Forgiven and whatnot, like I had a bunch of veterans and 1 rookie. I had 4 veterans and 1 rookie. So my job was not to teach them how to play the game. You know, it was not to teach them how to advance concepts, because I'll be honest, I'm never going to be that person. You know, I'm not a professional player. For the most part, I believe former professional players have like a higher base for knowledge, you know, than a lot of the people who come in. That being said, I think my main job was to manage the egos and facilitate the discussion and drive the discussions in the right direction so that we could improve. And I think at the time, like, we had a 15-3 record, which was, I don't think anyone had done that like prior to then, at least in EU. And I think Cloud9 had some kind of like really insane record in their name before that, but in EU that was unheard of. And I think in the summer split, once I'd left as well, Fnatic went on to do the first like 18-0 that year. So for me, I don't mind the difficult players. Like, my whole career, I've worked with many controversial people, and sometimes they've been some of my best players. But I also think a lot of these players are misunderstood. I think Forgiven is an amazing talent. You know, he definitely has his issues for sure. But as far as like someone who had absolute dedication to the game, this guy was obsessed, you know. And as far as his performance, I couldn't have asked for more, because he was the league MVP that split, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's interesting you say that, Joe, because I was going to come on to this later, and it makes sense to segue into it now. This idea that, you know, you will get clashes. There are egos, like there is in professional sports. You know, you mentioned Paul Gascoigne and others. I've just read Nicholas Bentner's book, which I couldn't believe how good of a book it was. But he wasn't a sort of great, but he was a flawed gem. I think he had a lot of potential, and it was his off the pitch antics which ultimately let him down, and he admits that in the book. You know, He didn't have his head screwed on properly, and he was difficult to manage, very difficult to manage. You know, I've seen recently that I think Limit said there was previously issues between you and Trick. Now, you know, if that's between you guys, I don't want to delve too much, but in general, you know, you do get clashes. Like you were saying, you do get egos and things, and that must be a challenge with rosters that change split to split. How do you sort of deal with clashes?
Look, everyone has their own ethos on how they want to win, right? With me, I have a lot of expectations from my guys with regards to just maintaining, you know, good balance in their life and their schedule and whatnot as well. And, you know, I always try my best to get along with my players the best I can. But sometimes there are moments where, you know, it doesn't work like that. And at the end of the day, you know, I'm trying to make my players the best they can be. My coach is trying to make the players the best they can be. And I hope my players are pushing us in the same direction too. You know, we don't always do everything how they want or a certain way as well. So yes, it's very normal for there to be differences, right? On occasion, you know. I mean, I think as well, it also goes back to the point of when you want to initially build your team, you also try to form the team in a way that you feel is the right way to win games, most of all, right? But you want players who match personality-wise. Sometimes I throw in a player who does have like a bit slightly difficult personality because the other people might be a bit passive, you know. But at the end of the day, we all need to criticize each other to get better. And we're in a competitive industry, we all want to win. So, you know, when we're all trying to win, there are going to be arguments at times. And I think that's completely normal. And I think that's fine too.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on a good point there, is that I guess you wouldn't want a team, I'm no expert here, but a team where everyone's so similar, right? Having someone that is a bit fiery, sometimes it complements. You know, one of my best friends in real life is very laid back and very chilled out. Almost too much, right? And then myself, I'm the other end. I'm put pressure on myself, I'm stressed. But when we're together, we complement each other really well, because they say like opposites attract and so on. So that's interesting to hear that from you. You do need a mix, right? Where they can feed off each other and so on.
I mean, ideally, you have a player who can give feedback without, you know, and receive it the same way. You know, you can do that in a non-toxic way. But I will say this as well. We work in an industry where I'd say obviously less so now because like I said, we have all these facilities and we can give the education to the players through an academy system or an academy program. But definitely back in the day and even occasionally now, we have guys who haven't spent much time in social situations because they've dedicated their life into becoming a professional player into this game. So they miss certain like social skills per se, you know, or let's say they don't know how to deliver something in a certain way either, because they're not necessarily in that sociable atmosphere as well. And that same can be said for anyone who's kind of dedicated themselves or isolated themselves into their sport in many other ways as well. I think it's very well documented in football or rugby or many of these other sports that there are these difficult players, and you have to be able to provide an education platform for them to be able to become a good profession, right? You're not always going to get a perfect boy, you know.
Now, of course, you do other things as well as general manager, I'm sure. And one of my questions was going to be around the challenges of being a general manager in top tier League of Legends and esports. Tell us a bit about your role, Joe, because there might be things you do that people not realise, you know.
Yeah. So first of all, like at least how we do it in SK, I think we are. I think we're a lot closer to football clubs than some of the other teams, just because we have the whole, let's say, sporting director and then coach specific, right? Whereas if you look in the UK or like some of the other teams, they'll just have one person who is like completely dedicated to what the team does. All the players have the control, for example, and like how the roster is built. But actually for us, we operate in a capacity where, you know, we have myself as a general manager, as like a sporting director, let's say, and then you have the head coach. which in my case usually is Jesse, but right now he's playing. Yes, my role is obviously making sure all the business needs are taken care of, first of all. So, we have a lot of great sponsors, as you can see, and like we have deliverables for them, and we have to keep them happy because at the end of the day, they pay our wages. It's super important that they're happy, and not only that, like it's the roster building aspect as well. So also just the kind of like recruitment aspect, not only of players but also of staff as well. So I'm working with like a team manager underneath, head coach, assistant coach, 5 players, then an academy team of 5 players, then let's say 2 performance coaches, one for our academy team, one for our LEC team, then also the person who is in charge of running that performance section as well, all of our analysts, sports psychologists. There's a lot of staff that need taken care of, and for me, I'm overseeing that. I'm overseeing the budget for that as well. And yeah, I in many respects, I have the final say on who comes in and out, whether that's a member of staff as well. So like the whole team building aspect is not just like the 5 players on the Rift, it's also outside of that as well. So I'm dealing with all of those people as well, and the needs around that. That's probably the most simple explanation I could give of it.
It's a big role. There's a lot of responsibility there, and I'm sure it is a big challenge. But you're experienced as well. So one thing I wanted to ask Joe is, after that initial time with SK, you were with Misfits, and with Misfits Premier, you won the EU Masters back in 2019. Now that was in Leicester in the UK. I was there. I don't know if I got to say hi to you properly, but I met Megalodontus there, who now writes for the site and helped with the discussion points for this interview. So shout out to Megalodontus. But talk us a bit through that, Joe. What was that like, sort of coming back to the UK and winning the EU Masters? That's EU Masters has really become more prominent in recent years.
Yeah. So I think that's like a great memory of mine, like obviously working with that. But I think it's worth like talking about the kind of background to that, because when I joined Misfits, initially I was working as a general manager of esports. So I was working with multiple esports because I had just done a year in Counter-Strike with Dignitas.
Yes, of course, yeah.
Yeah, and we had achieved a lot. I think we went from 24th in the world to 2nd. At our highest point, we won Epicenter and a lot of other lands. So my responsibilities were not only with like League of Legends, it was also with like the CSGO team that at the time, players like Sean Gers and whatnot as well. So my role was marginally different in the sense that, I wasn't, how can I say this? I was dedicated to the team because I was there the whole time, but I also had other responsibilities. So some of my delegation was different, right? Yeah. But when it came to like roster building, of course, I was still like the focal point on that. And, these are like the early days of the regional leagues. So we went from this whole like challenger scene where players would just go up and down.
That's right.
And like there was the whole relegation phase, then we're talking like franchising times now. So everything changed for the most part because all of these like little regional leagues popped up. We spent some time in the UK for 1 year. I think we won Forge of Champions several times. And then we went into the LFL. I think we came out 2nd that split or 3rd. I don't remember. I should know.
I don't know either, but I know it was high up. I remember that when Misfits moved to the France.
Exactly. And then we obviously went on to have that amazing run and win EU Masters at home, for me, which was like a really good memory. And especially because the LEC team wasn't doing that well. Obviously, there was the big super team project, which wasn't doing too well at the time. And the academy team was very much my project, it was like a smaller project of mine. And, working with those guys, like I'm pretty sure most of them are involved or in LEC right now or working with LEC teams in some capacity. I think maybe bar 1 or so or 2. No, but bar 1 only. So I was like super proud of those guys, you know. And you know, I think that's the most fulfilling thing, because even if you can't move a player up because you've got fantastic players in your own team already, there's always a sense of fulfillment when players go on to do other things as well. Like Leader and Neon are now like LEC players. Neon's a very like established LEC player as well. So just, you know, there was a great atmosphere in that team, and I think that EU Masters specifically was definitely one of the, I'd say, most competitive ones, because to even win that tournament, we had to beat Fnatic in the group stage, or we might have even lost against them, but we needed to get through the group stage with Fnatic and Rogue in there, and Rogue like inspired Larson, Finn, all those guys, so they had a really insane roster as well.
Yeah.
So to even make it through that group stage was unbelievable. And I don't mean this in a disrespectful way. I'd say our group stage might have even been harder than like the rest of the tournament, because we kind of rolled our way through the rest of the tournament. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, it was a really great like memory in my career for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And again, you've touched on a point I was going to ask later, but it links in quite nicely here, Joe, and that's around rookies and giving players chances from those academy teams. Because something I've noticed is I think we do have a lot of good academy teams. You know, here in the UK, we've got XL Esports, they've got BTXL, who recently finished runners-up in the EU Masters, and I think they've got some great academy players, but we've not really seen... We don't, unless I'm mistaken, don't tend to see tons of these academy players, of academies on big teams like SK and XL, go up to the LEC. Is that... Why do you think that is? Do you think... It's a difficult one, because you need to give rookies a chance, but at the same time, you need results as well, and it is a risk every time.
I think with me specifically, I've had a big focus on young players, on rookies. You know, if I would say, like, if I wanted to build my dream team or sports club of how I would want to operate it, I would very much want to operate it like Borussia Dortmund, right? Because it's a great sustainable model for the business, but also, you know, you have one of the best like talent development centers. So you're attracting all this talent like into your organization. And then, you know, for me specifically, I have in my career moved those players up a lot of the time. But to answer the question about why a lot of others don't, well, yes, for sure, there's a big difference between established players and players who have not come into the league yet. For myself specifically, this year we rebuilt the team with 4 players who came from the regional leagues, and you know, 1 player who'd swapped role the year before that. Obviously, we've made like changes recently as well, but for the most part, I think teams work in cycles, and you need to always have a pulse on, you know, who the next best player can be as well. I don't think you necessarily need to change too much to be the best, but you need to work within your cycle. And, you know, I think what's also important is when it isn't working with your veterans, you have to make some kind of concession in yourself, like of just knowing like when a player is past it, you know. And sometimes it's really hard to accept that, because you can grow a real good personal connection with that player over a longer amount of time. At the end of the day, you need to somewhat stay fresh, and I think you always need a balance of both to win it, right? Yeah, there's no right or wrong way. And of course, when you have a team like G2 who is functional together, you want that team to play together as long as possible, you know. At some point, there are going to be rookie teams who hopefully come up there and dethrone them, like Mad Lions more recently, right? So you look at it in this way. I want to build a core with my team, and then going into the next year, I really want to challenge for the top places, you know. So once I knew that I was not able to retain some of the veterans I had next year, I went on to, you know, that kind of rebuilding phase, you know.
Yeah. Well, we'll come on to the role swap and things in a minute, but I found it interesting as well that timings may affect when rookies get a chance, because I think Genax recently said that Canny or Lilip from the SK Gaming Prime Academy team would have maybe got promoted from Prime if it was the spring split, not this weird one-off sort of summer changes you've got. So timings affect things as well.
I think maybe that's true. I mean, at the same time, would we have wanted to make these changes in the spring split? No, because we obviously wanted to see a split of what our players could do as
Yeah.
well. We wanted to come to this conclusion together, you know. And I guess I could segue into talking about the change since you just asked about it. Actually, is um, one of the main reasons why we did this is because everybody in this team is very aware of like the dynamic that we have. Jesse is obviously moving from coach to player, so that changes the let's say hierarchy in the team a little bit. But he's also like a senior player, let's say, as well. So that already gives some kind of weight in his experience when he plays. I think the most important thing to consider is we have like a super good team atmosphere here, right? We have great team culture here. And when you bring a new player into that, sometimes that can be disrupted because there's like a social barrier and whatnot. And for us, like I told you, we're building a core here. We want something long term if possible. We have our players signed into next year. And yeah, I mean, the goal hasn't changed for us, you know. I think the way everyone talks about us in the scene right now is we're okay with finishing sixth place, you know. But since I've joined here, that's not what I want to be. Like when I joined here, we were ninth. Like the org was ninth, you know. Then in the first split, we finished sixth. I wanted to snowball on that. It's very public that I tried to re-sign a lot of those players, and ultimately they decided to go elsewhere. So then I was in another rebuilding phase, and we finished in playoffs again, right? And then for us, we realized, okay, if we kept things the way they were, maybe we would have had issues with getting like a higher finish as well, because like we had maybe like hit a bit of a wall, and yeah, we made a change to be ambitious. Of course, it's a huge risk, and for me, I can play it safe and cruise along, finish in playoffs. Nobody talks about us, but I'm here to win it. I don't care about finishing sixth. I want to win. Like in my career, I've finished second. I've finished third, fourth. I've been in the league so long and I've come so close. The last thing I want to do is come close again. I mean, in Misfits, we were the first Western team to bring a Korean team to 5 games at Worlds, I believe, in the SKT series, right? And we could have beaten them even. We could have been like one of the first Western teams to beat Faker in a best of 5, But again, it was always that almost.
I remember that. That was with Maxlaw, wasn't it?
Yeah. So it's always been, for me, it's always been so close, and that's not good enough for me. And by all means, I tell you, I'm sure quote it, like I'm very confident we're not going to finish in the bottom few places, right? But I would, as a general rule, I would always fail trying to be very successful rather than being somewhat okay and looking at, oh yeah, this is a great idea for my job security or
being a bit more complacent.
You know what I mean? Like I honestly I don't care about anything else than winning, and that's the perception that I want people to have about SK as well. That's not why I'm making this change. I'm making this change with my teammates and with the backing of every single member. In fact, it was brought as a consensus to me. To enable that, I had to agree with them, So, the most important thing for me is that we do whatever we can to be amongst those top spots. And, I will always be that general manager who will go for it. And I know some people might like that, some people might not like that, but that's how I am. And as long as I work in this industry and as long as I'm blessed to be able to be in this position, that's the type of general manager I'm going to be.
Yeah, you kind of answered my next question there, Joe, which was around, your ambitions and your goals. You said you want to win, you want to be in those top positions. And maybe, it's difficult because social media is such a difficult thing. And when you put that roll swap announcement video out on Twitter, that's had 320,000 views now. Almost, and I think videos like that are a reminder that you're very much in the public eye, even if you're not a player or whatnot. What's that been like? What's that been like dealing with it? Because sometimes things can get taken, you know, a 3-minute video is not very long. You know, if people watch this video, they maybe get to know your ambitions a bit more. But what's that like, dealing with that?
Look, I understand that it's a surprise to a lot of people. I mean, like I said before this interview started, I never really want to be in a position where, you know, I make changes so close to the split, you know, but if we did not deem it absolutely necessary to try and succeed, we wouldn't do it, you know. Forget about me. Like, a lot of my guys are experienced too, and think about what the players want. If the players think that this is best, then they must be onto something here. They are professional players, you know. Or my coaching staff agreeing too, included. You know, we've been doing this for a long time, and you know, we want to make these changes to try and push us to the next level.
Yeah, and I found that interesting.
Sorry, and about the public eye thing that you said. Yes, you know, we are in the public eye, but at the end of the day, a lot of people support us. A lot of people are confused about this, and I think people will love us even more if we do make those changes and we do well, right? We just we have to make the right decisions, and sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. That's the truth in it.
Yeah, that's sport. That's esports, right? And you know what I found interesting from this as well, Joe, that I think maybe a few people may have missed. You said in your video that Jessop was keen on picking up a player from the regional leagues, but the team requested he steps in himself. The team requested. This was a joint collective decision. That's interesting.
So yeah, the players did request Jessop to come back. First of all, he's a very experienced player. He's still playing at a high level. He's high up in solo queue, has been. Yes, there's going to be some rust initially, or there was, you know, but actually he is a player who has that much experience where, you know, he can get back to that level very quickly. And, you know, even mechanically, wasn't that far off to start with, you know, so it's just about upping that level a bit further. And he just provides a whole different element of experience. But at the same time, more importantly, bringing back to my point before, one of the reasons why we made this decision is because unanimously as a team, we are very together in our culture. We've got a very good attitude towards improvement. And that is one of the main reasons why we made this change as well. Because Jesse understands that. He's been present for all of that as well. And if we bring a regional league player into the team, it's a whole different dynamic. There's a whole social hurdle and a whole like social dynamic around that too. So
yeah, and on the changes as well, Joe, we've seen, you mentioned it briefly, Thomas Diakun has moved up to head coach from assistant coach, and he's UK as well. We're seeing more and more UK coaches and things enter League of Legends slowly but surely, you know, Mad Lions and everything. Tell us a bit about Tom and how you felt it was a good time for him to step up.
Yeah, I mean, naturally, again, he's been present for everything, right? He's doing well in with us. He started as an analyst and has kind of been, you know, working his way up. I think it's important to note that, of course, it's an interim position because he is, you know, kind of being brought into this very much like it's not the exact same, but you know, when a football manager gets fired and his assistant takes over for a few games or not, like that. Obviously, it's a bit longer term. So our expectations with him are very realistic. We've got a very clear, delegation of what we want him to give as well, and he now has a platform to prove himself to us. You know what he can do with like increased responsibility as well. You know, and we understand it's a difficult position for him, of course, because he isn't that experienced yet. But at the same time, it's a great opportunity for him to, you know, prove himself and you know, show us what he's got for the future. Because at the end of the day, you know, it's not only a talent development platform for players, it's also for coaches, it's also for managers as well. You know, we have staff who are maybe hoping to take my job one day. You never know, right? Maybe I'm not going to be around forever either, right? So, but there's always a kind of silver lining there. You know, would Tom have necessarily got the opportunity now? No. right? But now he has the chance to show me what he's got. He has a chance to show other teams maybe one day as well. Hopefully not, because I think he's a great. Well, I'd love to keep him. But it's a great opportunity for him to show what he's got as well. And yeah, he's obviously a super nice guy. Very northern, like nice, just really kind guy. So
No, that's good. Listen, good luck to Tom. It sounds like he's got a good opportunity, and wish him well and the team well. I want to go back, Joe, as well. Last split, I would love to get your thoughts on this because it was a weird season, wasn't it? There was the playoffs. It seemed even tighter than ever between even third place to seventh place. Couple of games in it, right? That is crazy. And obviously, you guys got into the playoff positions. What are your general thoughts reflecting back on that season, on I guess SK's performance, and also as a whole, the weirdness that happened?
Yeah, I mean, we had some incidents, obviously, like some external factors which were pretty well noted in the too much, obviously, which didn't make things easy for us. But we had fantastic players, like Brownie and Limit and Trick and those guys, right? In many respects, I only had a split to implement what I wanted to do, as well. Like I just came in halfway through the year. And I really, like I said, teams kind of work in cycles and you need a year or longer, let's say, to really establish yourself and like establish your core and whatnot. So for me, it's like, okay, how do we get our team good enough to the point where they can see the promise, going into the next year? And, maybe people stay, maybe people don't, Of course, I'm planning with both of those in mind, right? Yeah. I am always on the belief that you can reach playoffs with a good structure. I have done for most of my career, like almost every split that I've participated in, I've reached playoffs for the most part. So I am always of the belief that you can make playoffs at least. And of course, we were aiming for those world spots because for a big portion of the split, we were in third or fourth place, So, and last year was four spots going to worlds, right? I think we got a little unlucky with the meta changes as well. Maybe we could have been one of those teams that went to worlds and could have prevented Schalke's miracle run. I think we were I think we might have been the only team that beat them both times in the regular season last split. Which again is completely strange because even last split we went 2-0 against Mad Lions, with this team as well.
Wow, that's easy to forget, isn't it? God, dear.
So for us, it was do as much as possible in the short time that we had. We kept our expectations realistic. We brought a new player in from the regional leagues as well, and TynX was like role swapping himself, back then as well. So he was basically a rookie in that role. But I think from a point of education for myself getting back into it, not only that, like also, knowing what the existing players I like knowing exactly what the existing players I had were like as well. It was super informative for me. And also like as my role as a general manager is to also build infrastructure and good infrastructure for the team. See what I didn't like about how things were done before and what I did like and what I would keep, what I would try to improve, and there were a lot of like infrastructural changes that were made as well, which obviously people don't hear about, it's not the end of the world, but stuff like improving the accommodation, and, upping our performance sessions, consulting like our performance coaches. And just for reference, our head of performance is a guy called Benjamin Kugel, who was the fitness coach of the German national team when they won the World Cup in 2014.
Oh,
right?
wow.
Yeah. So, we're working with great people, and it's about taking all of the knowledge of these people and implementing it into what we're doing. And also because we're such a young industry, it's also about finding what can excel our players the most, what can push our players to be the best they can be as well. So SK will always be an org which like invests into that infrastructure a lot. And that was one of my priorities as well, was to create a better future for all the players that come through our doors as well, right?
Yeah, 100%. I know we're approaching the hour mark, Joe, so I'll try and get the last few bits in. I know we touched on this briefly earlier, but I don't think we spoke about this player in particular because we were speaking about rookies, and giving them chances and so on. TynX is someone that came in and has obviously gone out now, but there's this idea with rookies, like I was saying earlier. You get a chance. How long is a chance? He's had the split. Those difficult decisions need to be made, I guess, ultimately. If you feel like something can be improved in the team, you have to make those decisions while also trying to help that player find the right thing for them in the future, like you mentioned in the social media video.
I mean, look, the first things first is, we want to support Christian however we can. I'm completely, not only me, everybody is very sympathetic about, his position, right? We want to make that transition as easy as possible. I'm not going to make it hard for him to join another team if that's what he wants. If he also wants to split up and develop himself, like in solo queue and whatnot as well, that's fine. We're going to support that. He's still, contracted here. He's still an SK player. That's, that's how it is, right? The thing is, sometimes, as good as a player is, they aren't necessarily compatible with a team. And I have several players who are compatible, and unfortunately, like Christian was a bit like of the person who kind of took the fall in the end, right? But he's a great player, There's no doubt about that, and I know his situation is far from ideal, but at the same time, we want to support him however we can, right? Yeah. And like I said before, we make difficult decisions because we want to try and win, and that's just the truth.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. And on the role swaps thing, there's obviously been another big role swap that's taken a lot of headlines this off season, and that's Fnatic Bwipo moving from top lane to jungle. There's this notion that some people are saying, "Oh, jungle is the easiest role to play because that's the position that people get role swapped to." What are your thoughts on that?
I would I have a slightly different perspective on it. Like people are like, "Oh yeah, people are doing this role swap because it's easy and whatnot." Like, no, not everybody can jungle. Not every professional player can role swap in jungle. Eric is is an incredibly intelligent player, and that's one of the reasons why he's able to do it, because he understands these advanced concepts like sacrificing, doing a camp to show presence on the map and stuff like this. You know what I mean? And it's like I'm not going to sit here and talk and waffle on about what the game's, because that's not my job as general manager. But there are like loads of intricacies, not only in top lane, in every role, and for a player to role swap, they have to already be very like diverse in what they can provide to a team as a player, but also their own kind of intelligence about like the other roles as well, and how they can like kind of slot into that as well. And first of all, we wouldn't have made the change if Eric was not comfortable with it. He had to be 100% on board, or we would never have made this choice. But I'm super excited. I mean, we've had some time to practice now. I won't talk about like the practice too much because scrims at the end of the day. But I'm very optimistic for Eric because I've first of all seen what he can do as a support player, and this guy is more than capable of playing jungle. I can tell you that right now. Like he is a really fantastic player, just a wonderfully talented player in general. So yeah, and fun to work with as well, by the way. Great guy.
Yeah, it's good to hear. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys perform in the summer season. Last few questions, Joe. UK scene, we haven't spoken about it much. I know you said off camera beforehand it's good to, talk to us, and it's, feels like coming home a little bit, talking to a publication that covers the UK scene. Do you watch the UK scene? What are your thoughts on sort of, NLC, any players and development here that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we were involved, like back when I was in Misfits, we were in Forge of Champions, right? a year, right? Was it even a year and a half? I don't exactly remember, but um, I loved it back then, because being able to go home and see my family and a lot of my friends, and also connecting with people, who are in many ways from the same background as you, as
Mm.
well, was super cool. Of course, unfortunately, with COVID, I haven't been able to do stuff like, maybe go to like iSeries and all these places where we all meet up in the scene
Mm.
as well. Um, but for me, um, I'm happy to see more and more people pop up
Mm.
from the UK, of course. We're a huge player base when it comes to like Europe in general. When you talk about League of Legends as a game, like the UK is actually a huge player base
Mm.
as well. Um, and I would obviously love to see more like UK professional players come up as well. And for me, and for honestly, for any other general manager out there as well, like we're more than happy to pick up UK players if they're good. You
Mm.
know, and I think the combination of the UK into the Nordic leagues obviously brings like a bigger talent pool, and it also gives a bit more competition as well, within like the scene as well as that kind of Northern Championship. And I think that will kind of up the level as well. And look, you've seen it. Like BTX are finished in
Yeah.
the final, the Masters now as well, most recently. So I'm super excited for esports in the UK, and I really hope it continues to grow. And we have the premier product in football, for example. We
Yeah.
have the Premier League, right? The biggest market. So um, we have a huge player base in that, obviously, like dominant player base when it comes to Europe in general, and we always remain competitive on the international stage as well. And I think there's absolutely no reason why the UK can't do that in League of Legends as well. Because we do have the player base.
Yeah.
It's just about the players getting the level of competition now, and I genuinely feel that they are starting to do that more and more now.
Yeah, I agree. There's been improvements there for sure. I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, Joe. This was recently announced by the University of Portsmouth just the other day. There's this new esports coaching and performance degree that they're
Mm-hmm.
doing, and this has been a bit of a hot topic.
Mm-hmm.
Esports education. What are your general thoughts on this? Do you think this is a good idea, a sort of specialist
Mm.
course?
Um, I mean, it's a strange one, right? Because myself, I left school to pursue this,
Mm.
So when you talk about formal qualifications, no, I'm not that person who has a lot of those formal qualifications as well. At the same time, I always believe people should have a base of education for sure, because obviously staying in school is a great thing. University as well can be a great development platform. Um, if the facilities are right, that
Mm.
you always have the right ecosystem as well. So I think if the ecosystem is good and you're educating people in the right way, I'm always going to be supportive of that.
Mm.
Um, but look at any competitive industry, you're going to take the person who you think is the best for the role, regardless of what their background is.
Yeah.
A lot of football players don't go to university, or most don't actually. Most just school through um, school through their teenage years and then become a professional footballer after that. Um, but for me, I'm always supportive of giving people like a good basis as well, so that they have like freedom of what they can do. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's very hard to get into this industry. It's hard to stay in it, and um, yeah, I mean, having something to fall back on is great. Um, and I think people should always have choice. So in many aspects, I'm supportive if the ecosystem is good.
Yeah, no, that's a good answer. The last question I've got here, this was from Megalodontus. Why should people support SK?
Hmm. Yeah, so look, we're not the SK of old, I'll tell you that. Like, as far as like finishing around the bottom, I think we've had two splits now where we've finished in playoffs, and I'm sure, as you can see from the changes that we've made, we're not afraid to make the tough decisions to try and get to the top either. And I think people want to see the highest level possible. And if you look at SK as a brand historically, it's always been a brand associated with excellence in many different esports, and it's one of the most successful esports organizations of all time as well. And the importance of the org will stay the same in that aspect, that they always want to be amongst the best and be one of the best teams, if not the best team, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think we are not how the team used to be. You know, we're not around the bottom, and I'll be honest, like nobody really wants to play us either, you know, because we're not an easy team to beat, you know. So I think people should be interested in us because we're showing a different side to what the organization has been in recent times. You know, I hope we can be that premier team of excellence and perfection as of the old times as well, you know. Yeah, I mean, historically, you would have always said, you know, SK, Fnatic, I guess due to in more recent times, you know. But you look across the esports as well, like SK has always been in amongst the top, you know, and we want to be there too.
You've got good heritage, right? And now it's looking towards the future, like you say. Joe, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I've been wanting to interview you for ages, and I know I mucked up timings last time, so thanks for being patient and flexible with me. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Joe? I think we've covered a lot here, so it's been a really comprehensive interview.
No, not really. I mean, obviously, thank you for having me. And, you know, once, well, it seems that now everything is starting to relax a bit more with coronavirus. So, I mean, hopefully once the pandemic's gone, I can come back and, you know, maybe interact with my local like crowd again.
Yeah.
You know, I do deeply miss it, you know. Just even the small things like, you know, like the pub quiz at iSeries and stuff like that. It's great fun, you know. It's just kind of part of like UK esports folklore in some aspect, right? So yeah, I just can't wait to be back, and yeah, I hope we can show the best.
I hope to be back as well at Insomnia and all that, and hopefully meet up. They're talking about a new one coming back hopefully this year, but depending on government guidelines and everything. But Joe, thanks again for your time. Good luck to you and the team in the summer season. I'll be watching closely, and everyone, thank you for watching this. Please give Joe a follow. I'll put some links in the description. Give SK a follow, and please stay tuned for more interviews. Hopefully weekly video interviews coming back again as of now. So thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.